All right, so here we go. We want to evaluate criterion. And evaluate criterion means, of course, we want to operationally define job performance, because that is the criterion that we are most interested in. And then we need to be able to evaluate it. In other words, it's sort of like we're setting it up for, at some point, a manager has to go in, look at an employee and say, are they doing a good job, right? Are they having high levels of job performance? So we need to really address this idea a little bit. So when it comes to job performance, or many hypothetical constructs, right? Job performance is hypothetical construct. There is this thing called the ultimate criterion. That is to say, the thing that job performance really is. Okay, it's an inaccessible thing. It's a kind of an unknown thing. Step back for a second and let me kind of put it in different words. Another incredibly complex hypothetical construct that we study in psychology is intelligence. And how do you measure intelligence? And I think everybody's going to admit, no matter how you try to quantify intelligence, you're missing something, okay? Because you try to capture this incredibly complex intelligence, which composes sub-things like verbal abilities, memory speed, higher order critical thinking skills, etc., etc., etc. And any attempt to quantify intelligence is going to miss part of the big package. And it's the same thing. Job performance is this big package that we attempt to measure, but ultimately nobody is really positive what this package is. Okay? So what's going to happen is we're going to take this ultimate criterion, job performance, right, with a capital J and a capital P, something like that. And maybe we're going to break it down. So here perhaps might be the ultimate criterion, or an attempt to tackle the ultimate criterion for an administrative assistant. And so the hypothetical construct of a good administrative assistant is one that would have these skills: typing speed, typing quality, filing efficiency, blah, 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 all the way down to initiative, for example. Now, each of these is also a hypothetical construct that would need to be quantified. Now, I can imagine typing speed would be fairly easy to quantify, but what about initiative? How do you quantify initiative? I mean, it does... And guess what? This list is by no means the be-all and the end-all, right? There's going to be many other potential things that lead into a good administrative assistant that we're not capturing, okay? And so what happens is what we do capture is not the ultimate criterion, but the actual criterion. And so the actual criterion, or our measure of job performance, is an attempt to capture the ultimate job performance, right? Capital J, capital P, right? But we just have our own little measure here, the actual measure, okay? Now, we clearly want the actual criterion to overlap strongly with the ultimate criterion, but we're going to lose things because some things are really hard to measure or cost a lot of money, okay? So here might be a good representation, a visual representation of our attempt to measure the ultimate criterion of administrative assistant. And so perhaps what's going to happen is this purple is in some way a representation of the ultimate criterion. A good administrative assistant will exhibit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 functions, or 13 skill sets, all right? And again, this is just a hypothetical because there's many, many more as well. This is the actual criterion. This is what I'm using as my measuring device. I capture these, okay, so that's good. You want to have that overlap. But I also have liking and attractiveness involved in my criterion, okay? And so what we find is those things that are part of the ultimate criterion but I'm not measuring are called criterion deficiency. And those things that are part of my actual criterion that are not part of the ultimate criterion are called criterion contamination, okay? And so, yeah, there's nothing about attractiveness that makes a good administrative assistant. It's just not related to it in any way, shape, or form, but every single bit of literature in social psychology has stated more attractive people get higher ratings. It does not matter what the scenario is or what the situation is. So clearly there's going to be contamination when we attempt to measure the ultimate criterion. So this is what we're measuring. This right here. And so, are we doing a good job? So the ways to evaluate whether or not we've gotten a good measure of job performance, right? What makes a good measure? Number one, relevance, okay? And relevance simply refers to how large is the overlap. Because a relevant criterion will have a large overlap between the actual and the ultimate criterion. Okay? Reliability, and that is just if I use this criterion 5 separate times on the same employee, will I get the same results 5 times? So the first one is in some ways a reflection of validity. The second one is clearly the reliability side. Sensitivity is, does my quantification of job performance, because that's really what I'm doing here, is quantifying job performance. Does my quantification of job performance do a good job of identifying high performing employees compared to low performing employees? So as an example, a criterion, maybe I would try in a course, I try to measure, course knowledge, right? So it's like job performance, but in the classroom, course knowledge. So I design an exam to assess you, and what happens is the scores range from 74 to 76. Oh, that is not sensitive, because it has no way of identifying top students from bottom students, who does and does not know, who is, in this going back to I.O., who does in fact exhibit high levels of job performance, who is low levels. Okay? The fourth one is down-to-earth practicality, because remember, the manager that has to quantify is part of the performance management cycle, which is in the next module, needs to be able to do so in a practical manner. Can't involve a lot of paperwork, can't involve a lot of time, has to be relatively quick to figure out, don't have to have a lot of training in how to make it happen, things of this nature. And then finally, it's got to do with almost employee reactions, because when a manager evaluates an employee's job performance, the manager's ultimate assessment of job performance may or may not reflect what the worker themselves feel is their job performance. And so a good criterion measure will be seen as fair by both the manager and all the employees. Okay? And we're going to talk in the next little video what happens when an employee thinks, I was evaluated unfairly. I do not believe that the raise that I was given is an accurate reflection of what I give to this company. No fair. I'm going to start to steal staplers now. Okay? And so workers that view a criterion as unfair will find ways to make it fair. All right? So look forward to that in the next video.